Vietnam Anthem.
Này công dân ơi, đứng lên đáp lời sông núi, đồng lòng cùng đi hy sinh tí gì thân sống, vì tương lai quốc dân cùng sống phá vỡ bên, làm sao cho núi sông từ nay luôn vững bền, dù cho thầy phơi trên gươm dao, thủ nước lấy máu đào đem bao, nổi sông lúc biên phái gần gian nguy người công.
And now we will have a moment of remembrance. Sau đây là một mặc niệm để nhớ đến các anh hùng dân tộc đã bỏ mình vì nước, các đồng bào và chiến sĩ đã hy sinh trong chiến đấu bảo vệ tự do. Bao nhiêu đồng bào của chúng ta mùi thân không tù, bao nhiêu người bỏ thân trên đường đi tìm tự do. Cuộc đời bắt đầu.
Năm bốn cha bỏ quê xa, chốn đã chôn nhau cắt rốn bao lâu đời. Một ngày năm bốn cha bỏ phương trời, mộ miền Bắc âm u mưa phùn rơi. Một ngày năm bốn cha bỏ sơn Tây, dắt díu con thơ vô sóng nơi biển Hòa. Dù là xa đó cũng là nước nhà, và miền nắng soi vui gia đình ta. Một ngày 75 con bò nước ra đi, 20 năm là 2 lần ta biệt xứ. Giờ cha lưu đày ở nơi trên đất ta, và giờ con lưu đày ở đây nơi xứ lạ. Một ngày năm bốn cha lùi quê hương, lánh Bắc vô Nam cha muốn xa bão cường. Một ngày 75 đứng ở cuối đường, loài quỷ dữ xua con ra đại dương.
Tư tưởng vượt biên tìm tự do có từ rất sớm. Ngay trong tháng 5 đã có những con tàu đánh cá vượt biên đi thẳng sang các nước Đông Nam Á xin tị nạn. Người vượt biên vượt biển nào cũng chấp nhận số mệnh sẽ an bài cho họ. Con ra đi để con sau này sang Mỹ vừa tìm về buôn bán, và con chấp nhận những chuyến đi năm ăn năm thua. Con ra đi một là con nuôi cá, hai là má nuôi con. Tức là khi chết thì thân xác sẽ bị cá ăn, còn nếu bị bắt ở tù thì má sẽ đến tù thăm nuôi con. Hàng triệu người vượt biên vượt biển ra sao? Họ cứ lái tàu ra khơi, chạy đại chỉ một ngày thì dùng lá bàn bẻ tay lái xuống hướng Nam. Lỡ chạy lệch qua bên phải thì vào vịnh Thái Lan đến đất Thái, lệch bên trái thì vào Mã Lai, lỡ tay lái qua Đà thì xuống Nam Dương. Đâu có được mấy chiếc tàu định được hướng đi, tới đâu thì tới, chỗ nào cũng là đất tự do, sợ chi. Đến đất Thái có trại Songkla, đến Mã Lai có trại Pulau Bidong, đến Nam Dương có trại Galang, đến Phi Luật Tân có trại Palawan, đến Hồng Kông có trại Chimawan. Mỗi trại chưa đến hàng chục ngàn người, lúc cao điểm có đến 50.000 người ở cùng một thời gian.
Malaysia's principal complaint is there's no sign the exodus is ending, and the resettlement of refugees is lagging far behind arrivals. In the past 6 months, 8,000 people have been resettled in the U.S. or in other countries from this camp, but in the same period, 24,000 arrived here.
Từ năm 1975 đến năm 1997, Cao ủy tị nạn ghi nhận có 839.228 thuyền nhân Việt Nam, trong đó 749.929 người được đi định cư tại nhiều quốc gia tự do và 109.000 người phải hồi hương. Người về tị nạn đã được hơn 20 quốc gia đón nhận, trong đó có nước Pháp, Anh, Đức, Na Uy, Thụy Điển, Bỉ, Đan Mạch, Phần Lan, Hoa Lan hay Áo Quốc. Nhưng đón nhận nhiều có nước Úc và Canada, mỗi nước nhận hơn 100.000 người. Riêng nước Mỹ Hảo Hiệp đã nhận đến hơn 600.000 thuyền nhân Việt Nam.
I wanted to play a role and call the United States Navy into action to rescue Vietnamese boat people from the South Pacific Ocean in 1979. And in order that we receive an average of 14,000 immigrants per month from the previous war zones. We also encourage other national leaders to follow our lead. And although I cannot be with you tonight, I stand in spirit along with you, other prominent members of the Vietnamese American community and dignitaries, to thank the Immigrant Resettlement Cultural Center and Mr. Vu Van Lock for the dedication and work that has led to full Confederate future for thousands of Vietnamese refugees in the past 13 years. Congratulations on the lives that have built yourselves in our great nation, and may good fortune follow you for generations to come.
Hello everyone, my name is Kelly Lee, and I'm an assistant professor at UCLA. I wish I could be there with you all today, but I'm at another event in Southern California, also commemorating the end of the Vietnam War. I'd like to share a few words about the Viet Museum and why I think it's such a treasure trove for our community. While I was working at Stanford University, I had the honor of collaborating with the Viet Museum in San Jose to help curate the Vietnamese Refugee Archive exhibit. This project emerged during a time of transition for the museum, an important moment as it re-examined how its collections were being preserved, shared, and reimagined for the future. Together with members of the Vietnamese refugee community here in San Jose, we built the museum's website and its first curated digital exhibit, featuring digitized artifacts, works of art, and oral histories. Each object in these exhibits carries something irreplaceable: memory. Some were made in re-education camps, tools and gifts crafted out of necessity, out of hope. Others more painful searches for closure, like a family's return to Vietnam in search of a fallen pilot. Some are artworks crafted by refugees to process trauma, to remember loved ones, and to begin healing. These aren't just historical artifacts. They hold our community's memories. Of loss and hardship, yes, but also of strength and resilience. For my generation, the generation after, they reflect not only what happened to our elders, but also how they responded, how they cared for one another, how they resisted erasure, and how they made meaning in the face of displacement. That's why what has been preserved in the Viện Museum isn't just history, it's our heritage. Each item, each photograph, each document has been protected and passed forward by survivors, by families, by communities who understand the importance of remembering. Learning through these objects offers something that textbooks often can't. They invite us to feel the textures of lived experience, to connect across generations, not through abstract timelines, but through the everyday items people held in their hands, made with care, and chose to preserve. I've used these very artifacts in my classes, first at Stanford and now at UCLA, not only to teach history, but to help students understand the humanity behind it. The students don't just study the past. They listen to it, they hold it, they begin to see themselves in it. These objects return agency to the people whose stories are too often flattened or forgotten. They offer dignity in the details, reminding us that we are more than victims of war or statistics of displacement. We are caretakers of memory, storytellers, and makers of history in our own right. To engage with these artifacts is to reclaim our narratives on our own terms. But we aren't just preserving the past, we're also shaping the future. Museums like the Viện Museum are ensuring that the next generation grows up not only knowing where they come from, but feeling proud of it. That's the power of this museum. That's the power of memory, held with care, and passed on with purpose.
It is my honor to also introduce distinguished individuals who have been strong supporters of IRCC, of the Viện Museum, and the Vietnamese community. First, all the way from Washington, D.C., please welcome Congresswoman Zoe Lofgren of California's 18th Congressional District, who's been a fierce advocate for Vietnamese Americans and the Vietnamese youth at the federal level. Thank you so much, Zoe, for being here.
Well, 50 years, it seems like a long time ago, and yet just an instant. I remember I was working for my predecessor, Congressman Don Edwards. I was actually on the phone to the embassy in Saigon when the phone went dead. After that, we were fortunate here in Santa Clara County that so many of those who had lost everything to the communists ended up in our community. I remember when I was on the Board of Supervisors, seeing people who had been tortured. I remember the Vietnamese Air Force veterans who had been tortured in a re-education camp and who came here, and we needed to help them heal from the terrible abuse that they had received. And at the same time, we had members of the Vietnamese refugee community forming associations to help each other. Foremost among them, IRCC. And I am here today to thank someone who we all recognize for his service over these many years. Mr. Lockwood, who helped me study, who stood up always for freedom, and I'm going to go down there so he doesn't have to stand up. But who also was the inspiration for the Viet Museum. I honor him and I thank him for all he has done. And I know that his health is a little bit failing, but I believe his story is not yet over. He has more to contribute to our community, and we all owe him a tremendous debt of thanks. I also have a congressional recognition resolution for the IRCC, which I will present to him. And I would like to say how honored I am to represent all of you as we continue our quest for human rights in Vietnam. God bless you all.
Thank you so much, Zoe. My friends, a mayor, now congressman, has also come home to us. Please welcome Sam Ricardo.
Keep up with me. I don't want to take away from the moment here, as my colleague, Congresswoman often honors a great American. I say great American because, look, you have reminded all of us in America, and the founding of the IRCC and the thousands of families that you have helped through that incredible organization, and in capturing, embracing, and holding up the history of refugees in our community to the world. You reminded all of us of what it is to be American. How incredible this community has been to our country, how blessed we are to be the place where so many Vietnamese Americans have chosen to resume their lives, to start a new life. We have learned so much. I know that Black April is typically a moment when we honor and remember in a very solemn way. But we have so much to be grateful for as Americans, that this community has enriched us, not just because of the wonderful food and culture, economic growth, and all the things, of course, the community brings, but far more because of the spirit that's been revived, a spirit that embraces freedom, that reminds all of us who are Americans who were born here and take it for granted that freedom isn't free, that reminds all of us the incredible immigrant ethos that built this country, about sacrifice for our children, about risk, about the imperative that we stand up for what we believe in. I want to thank you, Mr. Boone, and I want to thank everyone here who has been part of this extraordinary experiment, which has been so wonderfully successful and has enriched our community so much. Thank you, Renee, for gathering us, and thank you to all the volunteers. You have taught us much about ourselves in this 50-year-plus journey. But perhaps the most important lesson, it's a lesson that's very important for us today as a country, which is that we are so much greater as a nation when we open our arms and welcome the refugee, those who are fleeing from persecution, from war, and from hardship. And I think about my own faith tradition and my recent loss of Francis, and how the passion that he had to ensure that we embrace those who are fleeing hardship and welcome them into our communities. You are a great example to all of us of what we can be together as a country. So for that, come on. Thank you.
means so much that you're here, be with us today. It's time to hear from our superstar, Supervisor Betty Yun, who is the major sponsor of this program today. She's the reason that we can have the space and the resources to hold this very important commemoration. Please welcome Betty.
Thank you, Edmund, for those kind words. I'm here because of you, because of that love, because of the community. Xin kính chào quý cô, chú bác và anh chị. Betty rất xúc động và vinh dự khi được bảo trợ và biểu diễn tổ chức buổi tưởng niệm tháng 4 đêm hôm nay. Đây không chỉ là một dịp để tưởng niệm lịch sử. Đây là một hành trình đầy xúc cảm, là câu chuyện của bao gia đình Việt Nam, những câu chuyện về chia ly, về hy sinh, về hành trình vượt biển, với đôi tay trắng nhưng với trái tim đầy ắp niềm hy vọng. Là người Mỹ gốc Việt đầu tiên được vào hội đồng giám sát của hạt Santa Clara, Betty luôn ghi nhớ và trân trọng hành trình gian nan mà thế hệ đi trước đã trải qua để xây dựng cuộc sống mới trên đất Mỹ. Từ tận đáy lòng, Betty xin được gửi đến những bậc tiền bối, đến cha mẹ, đến cộng đồng yêu quý, lời tri ân chân thành nhất. Chính tình thương, sự kiên nhẫn và niềm tin của quý vị đã nâng bước thế hệ thứ hai đến ngày hôm nay. Cảm ơn quý vị đã cho Betty cơ hội được phục vụ và được đồng hành cùng cộng đồng trong hành trình đầy ý nghĩa này. Và nhân dịp này, Betty xin tỏ lòng cảm ơn Đại tá Vũ Văn Ngọc, người sáng lập Viện Museum tại History Park, nơi lưu giữ lịch sử oai hùng nhưng cũng đầy đau thương của Việt Nam Cộng Hòa, để các thế hệ mai sau hiểu và ghi nhớ hành trình vượt biên tìm tự do. Đây rất là may mắn là lúc gặp đại tá được giới thiệu là bác Lộc, trên lúc nào cũng là kêu bằng bác. Và trong hơn 10 năm qua, bác Lộc lúc nào cũng ngồi với Betty, hướng dẫn cho Betty, giúp cho Betty tập tiếng Việt giỏi hơn và gần đến cộng đồng Việt Nam hơn. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Betty Young, and I have the great honor and privilege of representing District 2 on the Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors. It means a lot to be able to sponsor and support today's event and support the engagement of the Vietnamese refugee community. It means a lot to be your first Vietnamese American representative on the board. That is not an accomplishment I claim to be my own. It is the result of an incredible immigrant refugee community rebuilding their lives here and building a path for the second, third, and subsequent generations to find their way home and to find their way upwards, always with Vietnam in their heart. Thank you for your sacrifices. Thank you for rebuilding with eternal optimism. Thank you for doing all of this for children that may not have been born yet when you left Vietnam, for grandchildren you have yet to meet, and for subsequent many generations in the future who grow up strong because of what you did. In search of freedom, in search of democracy, in search of a new homeland where your children and subsequent generations can grow up strong. I'm a direct beneficiary of your support and your fight. I will never forget that. In this spirit of remembrance and gratitude, it is my honor today to recognize the pillar of our community, Peplo. I call him Uncle, because that's how he introduced himself to me. When I met Peplo, I didn't know he was the Wu Pen Law. I didn't. That he taught me how to speak Vietnamese better. He taught me he shared lessons of Vietnamese history with me. He shared wisdom of building community. Love, you were the one who told me when I was having some trouble to go to those, directly to those who had issue with you. Sit down with them over a cup of tea and come to an understanding. You told me not to be afraid of anyone or anything, and that no matter how loud I spoke, they'll never be too loud, because I carry the voice, your voice, the community with me. And when I told my dad that I knew that love, he didn't believe me. My father's a huge fan of yours, and he's very grateful to your leadership. I had to show photos of us for him to believe me. He was certain that I had mixed up that love with the love. Thank you for your leadership with the Immigrant Resettlement and Cultural Center, a center that directly served my family, my relatives, and my neighbors, our neighbors. Thank you for assisting more than 20,000 immigrant and refugees over 6 decades, providing critical support services and a path forward. And it's my distinct privilege today to present you with great humbleness and humility, a commendation with my signature on it as the first Vietnamese American supervisor elected to the Board of Supervisors. Thank you. I would be remiss if I didn't mention and also express my gratitude. So, Dave, Osh, Sam, you're all the OGs. You were supporting the Vietnamese American community when it was not maybe the popular thing to do, or the most common thing we saw. But you always stood side by side, and your names are spoken with just as much reverence in our refugee households as anybody. Thank you.
We are in fact circulating a petition to name Senator Dave Cortese an honorary Vietnamese American. But it's so great to see you and Mrs. Cortese here today, Senator. I also would like to take a moment to recognize Council members Ash Kaura, Council member Bien Duan, Council member David Cohen. Thank you for being here. I know you have stuff to present to us, but my boss has just informed me that we've got to move on. The show has got to move. But I do want to take a moment. Primo, my Hugh is here. And I just want, for the moment, I would just like all of you dignitaries to just please stand and wave to the audience. We want to recognize you. Who's here from the state of California. Thank you. Thank you. This is Olette Underwood, also here. So, I want to recognize all of you who've been a major part of the support for the community, the support for IRCC, the support for Viet Museum over the years. Mike Honda called me personally. He said he wished he could be here, but he's in another state. And he sent a very nice message to my dad, he said. But anyway, thank you. We must move on. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to present to you the Board of Directors and the advisors of the board for IRCC and the Viet Museum. And at this time, I would also like board members to assist, if you can, to bring Black Love on stage. Not for a speech, but to just wave at everyone. Will you do that? Bring the wheelchair over with you. Lynn, please come and help it. But board members, please come onto the stage.
Proceed to the room.
The writer Mark Twain used to say, the rumors of my demise have been greatly exaggerated. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the visionary gentleman behind IRCC and the Viện Museum over the last 45 We have Phim, we have khách, and Phim, and as they exit the stage, the screen will come down, and you'll actually get the speech from Mr. Lappu. Do you think you would get away from this program without a speech from Mr. Lappu? You will actually get a speech from him.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody mentioned about my name because today is very, very important to my life. Now I temporarily live in nursing home in Cupertino. My leg is killing me, but I hope my mind is still very good. Thank you very much. Today I have to say thank you, America. Thank you, America people. 50 years ago, 100,500 people get out of Vietnam because of the American welcome us, and then President Carter take care of the old people, and then President Reagan take care of the household. Now we have 2,500,000 people in United States. We are all okay. We are all the good people. And thank you very much. And I have some good friends in local area. We meet other 30 years ago. Thank you very, very much. Thank you very, very much. Tôi nhìn thấy có cái phần cờ rõ cầm lên, cái đó là cái học của cuốn trường của Việt Nam. Tôi hỏi cô là đâu ra cái này thì cô nói là chồng cô ấy là người Việt Nam, bố chồng thì mới qua đời. Cô lục tất cả những tổ còn lại của bố chồng để đem ra cho trời mà thì cái đó là một phần. Tôi nghĩ là bố chồng này là quân nhân và đã có những cái chiến công oanh liệt. Từ cái buổi gặp gỡ đó, tôi có ý kiến là mình phải có một phần làm ra một cái viện bảo tàng nói về những cái trận chiến tranh vừa qua, những cuộc di thản và cuộc lập nghiệp của người Việt ở tại Hoa Kỳ. Nhưng mà cái viện bảo tàng này thì nói thay cho quý vị, không phải là viện bảo tàng 4.000 năm lịch sử. Một bảo tàng về giới hạn từ khoảng 1950, sau đấy thì thế chiến trải qua đến năm di cư Bắc Nam 54, rồi 75 đi ra khỏi nước cho đến ngày nay. Cái viện bảo tàng Nhân văn nó có một cái thời gian giới hạn, đó là cái viện bảo tàng mà chúng ta nói đến ngày hôm nay. một trong những các di sản từ truyền nhân và Viện Bảo tàng nhận được từ tay của bác sĩ Nguyễn Tùng. Trong cái thời kỳ đầu thập niên 80 là người Việt Nam đi vượt biển rất là nhiều và biết bao nhiêu thảm kịch đã xảy ra với báo tố và thì có một số bác sĩ Việt Nam đã tình nguyện đóng cửa phòng bệnh để mà đi xuống con tàu của Đức và cùng với các bác sĩ ở trên thế giới này đi vớt người vượt biển. Và bác sĩ Vũ là một trong những người tiên phong, ông đã đi vớt nhiều tàu vượt biển, ông đã làm lá cờ phủ lên trên những cái con tàu và làm cái dấu hiệu để các tàu vượt biên tới để cứu. Rồi thì trên những con tàu vượt biên trước khi đánh chìm thì có cái di sản là thế này, cái là vàng, cái này rất là quý, cái này nặng rồi được cắm ngay bóng tinh ngay vào cái tàu, ông gỡ ra, ông đem về vào tặng và một trong những di sản tặng cho Viện Bảo tàng. Từ cái lúc mà Viện Bảo tàng mới thành lập, tôi muốn giới thiệu quý vị cái tấm lòng của những người đi vớt người vượt biển và đem lại những cái di sản như thế này. Không biết là bao nhiêu người đã chết và bao nhiêu người còn sống, còn nhớ lại những cái la bàn như thế này đã đem họ đến tự do.
Hello everyone, thank you for having me here. I grew up in San Jose, so it's an honor for me to be back. I'm a writer. I'm not a public figure. I'm not a politician. But I did want to acknowledge Congressman Lawford when you said that the fight for humanity continues. And I wanted to, as a human being, I wanted to extend that hope today, and hope that we as a community can fight for that humanity for our neighbors, perhaps even people in our own family, what it means to be living in these times. So that's my hope. Today I'm going to read some poems that are for my mom, my dad, and my community, and the memory that we all carry as Americans, perhaps. The first is the hymn. Known for her cooking, the consistent perfection of spring rolls evenly fried, her secret to brush it with a hint of applesauce. To add some color, give some flavor. She is the mother of 5, a wife, a widow. It is easy to forget her strength and its subtlety. She keeps it hidden. The smell of apple juice that reminds me of my family, the 18 days we spent on a tanker. The sticky metal floor streaked with the vomit of crying children, a pearl a day she removed from a string, milky white marbles on an army-issued blanket. She made a makeshift playground that kept what was ours. I would have to be good. No crying, no complaining. It was mine to keep, it was mine to lose. Being thirsty, that I remember. Drinking juice from a can, tomato, apple, a concoction of both. My mother traded her red jade bracelet for a jar of water. The kind you drank if you had money to buy, if you spoke Korean, the kind that was plain without the taste of salt. She said, drink it slowly. I was given a third of this precious water. The rest she saved, hid in a suitcase. This poem starts with my father. My father's body is a map, a record of his journey. He carries a bullet lodged in his left thigh. There's a hollow where it entered, a protruding bump where it sleeps. The doctors say it will never awaken. It is the one souvenir he insists on keeping. Mother has her own opinions. Oh, father is crazy. As a child, I wanted a scar just like my father's, bold and appalling. A mushroom explosion that said I too was at war. Instead, I settled for a grain of rice. A scar so small, look closely there, here between the eyes, a bit to the right, there on the bridge of my nose. My father says I was too young to remember. It happened while I was sleeping. Leaking roof, the pounding rain, drop after drop after drop. And this is the last piece that I will read. It is for my uncle. He's no longer with us, and he was someone who was kind of a legend in my mind. The mistress. With wages earned on the assembly line, he stopped drinking cognac. It's worth drinking only in the company of soldiers. Buys burgundy by the gallon, cigarettes by the carton. Facing the wall in his living room, in a chair, he sits telling stories in the evening smoke. The silhouette of a woman dancing from tobacco tucked between fingers, lips. If I could just smoke while sleeping. If only she could. Of the stories, the gun he held to a general's head. The general who cried hung my promotion. I was supposed to be colonel. The American officer who ate at his table. The American officer who ate at his table. He described the meat, how tender it was, simmering in a clay pot. I told him names of her people. A dog is a dog. While on leave, as if one could just leave, he had his nephew stand guard with plastic rifles, tinfoil helmets. They could have been officers if only they would listen. Of the stories, the one he liked best was about a woman, not just any woman, my bride to be, full of anger and spit and love. She cleaved her finger, the engagement ring intact in a fit of jealousy. She returned it in a box with a note that read, I return this ring for you have been taken. She discovered my secret, my mistress, the war. Thank you.
I'm going to share why I'm right, and in a way, why we should all write, and setting our story toward the future. I once stood in front of a room full of high school students and read a story about the end of the Vietnam War, how I fled to America as a child, and how that experience continued to haunt and inform me when a young woman, moved by my story, raised her hand. Can you tell me why my father never told me about that war? She asked. He drinks a lot, but he says little. Her father was a South Vietnamese soldier, she said, and he saw much bloodshed, but his sadness was mostly internalized, or she expressed itself with bouts of rage. Sometimes the memories of the war are too much to bear, I say, and you can't find the words. But even if never spoken or shared, trauma have a way to pass on. This is why we all need to find a way to confront and process that sadness. For me, it is through the act of writing. The young woman nodded, then she broke down and wept. Her friends rushed to comfort her. The room felt silent then, but for the sounds of her weeping. It was as if in that moment it finally dawned on her that she was part of something much larger than herself, that the personal and the historical are intrinsically bound, and that the bombs that detonated on a distant land years ago somewhere and somehow continue to reverberate in the heart of a girl born years later in America's heartland. But such is war. I watched her cry and it reminded me of the famous James Baldwin quote, "You think your pain and your heartbreaks are unprecedented in the history of the world. and then you read. After my lecture, she came up and said she always wanted to write, and seeing me, the first Vietnamese writer she ever met, she felt somehow now that she could. At another lecture some years later, a young man, also a Vietnamese American, came to thank me afterward. As a college student, he had attended one of my readings in the past and had bought one of my books, Phim Dreams. Apparently that book made an impact, so much so that he made his parents read it too. I asked him, why didn't you tell me about how you escaped or your life in the refugee camp, he told me. And this was their answer. Well, I didn't want you to be haunted by our memories. But the young man wanted to know about that camp experience. He wanted to know what haunted them. Your book, he said, gave them permission to tell their stories. So now they promised that they will tell me everything I wanted to know. I confess that the 2 episodes above were among the most powerful experiences I have ever had in my more than 3 decades as a writer. My own sadness expressed through the written word somehow connected one generation to another and bridged that yawning gap often made of silence and hidden grief. A refugee boy who grew up angry and confused in America, I was fragmented inside, burdened by memories of the war that I witnessed as an army brat. I, who came to America at a pubescent age, became an American so quickly that after some years, it felt as if there were 2 versions of myself vying for attention, 2 distinct heartbeats. After college, instead of going to medical school as my parents expected me to, I decided to become a writer. I did it against my parents' wishes and out of desperation. I never thought about the impact of my written words might have on future generations. I simply wanted to connect my Vietnamese past to my American future. I simply wanted to be made whole again. So why do I tell you all this? Because it is now 50 years since that war ended, and that refugee boy is now an American man entering old age. And the best thing I can say about war, if you went through one and survived it, is that the horror and the hurt do fade with time, especially if you work through them. But by the same token, for those of us who were profoundly touched by war, it never ever truly ends, no matter how much we write about it. After hundreds of essays and articles and 4 books, after participating in a couple of documentaries, I still wake up in tears on some early dawn fresh from the vivid memories of a long-lost world. 50 years and still some part of me remains that 11-year-old standing alone in a refugee camp in Guam listening to the BBC announcing the fall of Saigon, still mourning a lost country, a robbed childhood. The old ghosts I tell you, they hover nearby, not fully exercised, not fully appeased by the written words. And how they haunted. My father fought that war from its beginning to end, and through an amazing display of willpower got an MBA and became a banking executive in America. He brought us out of poverty. By all accounts, we were living the American dream, but unlike the original, at dinner time always veered back to talks of Vietnam. Over wine or whiskey, he would relive the battles he fought and won, or else we talk about the people we knew and the lives taken from us. On some weekends, over drinks with his war buddies, the battles they fought were relived. Bomb spells and helicopters hovered over a battlefield and mortar shells exploded. Sometimes there were great laughter over fond memories. Other times, their voices somber, especially when speaking of fallen comrades and those incarcerated in re-education camps, and their voices filled me with despair. Our lives in America were thus contradictory. Weddings, colleges, new homes, European vacations, the American dreams realized were peppered with tragedies of Vietnam, a past that kept bleeding into the present. Our story of ascendancy in America was constantly pulled backward to a place brought, a country gone, a way of life no more. The war erupted when my mother wept, reading flimsy thin letters sent from relatives and friends from Vietnam, and their stories of destitution and death and their losses made our evening sobering, muted. And even if we didn't want to have anything to do with Vietnam, it kept showing up on TV and newspapers in those early years. In the evening news with Walter Cronkite, we saw blurry images of boat people walking up and down on their rickety boats, waving flags to passing ships, begging to be saved. Eventually, I came to accept my American optimism will always be burdened by memories of a lost country. The war ended. The war never ends. So I write. I tell stories to write in the chaos. I write because history, as Baldwin warned, is trapped in people, and people are trapped in it. But I write knowing that for every Baldwin's warning, there's always an M. Scott Momaday's wise counsel. Anything is bearable as long as you can make the story out of it. These days, I still strive toward words though my powers wane and my will weaken. But I write with the knowledge gained from the years that there's transformative powers in the well-told story. When I started out all those years ago, I only wanted to give shape to pain, but over the years, I find that there's an unexpected gift of literature. It connects and it transforms the lives of others in ways beyond my imaginations. If trauma can be inherited, then let the written word, the well-told tale, be the salve, the elixir to new wounds, the bridge that spans the generations, the vector toward peace. Thank you.
What I got from that is welcome to old.
Hi, chào cô chú, anh chị em. My name is Jane Mai, and I'm a visual artist. I'm choosing this picture so I can see his images, so I can describe them to you. It's such an honor for me to be here and to share this life with you. I haven't even started. Jane, thank you so much for the invitation. A lot of my work focuses on the intersection of life, faith, and survival. Story has been a driving force in my work, and I hold the label as artist, but really I feel like I'm a steward of the story. I was the first in my family to be born in America. Went to San Jose State, where I met my husband, where I found my voice as an artist and as a woman. And I'm just so grateful for all I've inherited. And I do very much recognize my inheritance to be able to choose to make a life and a living as an artist, and to be able to voice myself freely in the medium that I find is most appropriate. This image here is, I can't even remember the title of it, but I can tell you what it's about. There's the rebirth. This piece is actually out there in the lobby if you have time to take a look. Because I was born here, it is really important for me to absorb the history of my predecessors and of my family, my husband's family, so that I can remember my privilege. There's plenty in this world and in this life to complain about, but when I return to that place and make art about it as a prayer and meditation, I find myself extremely grateful. Sometimes too grateful to be angry. There's also a lot to be angry about. These three birds here were made using textiles, some of which I inherited from my line from my grandmother, that she bestowed upon me. And they're stuffed with cotton that were harvested from the farms that my husband and his family worked on when they first came to America. Some of the blue bird there you see with the writing on it, I used my grandfather's travel journal that we still have. And in his handwriting, and in English, very interestingly, it said, left Saigon, April 30th, 1975 at 2:30 p.m. Arrived Subic Bay, May 8th, 1975. Arrived Indiantown Gap, Pennsylvania. And it was all in his handwriting and written in English, which I thought was so interesting. Here, a lot of my work speaks on how my family history and our collective history weaves its way into the present. Immigration is something very dear to my heart, understanding why people choose to migrate and why they feel the need to migrate. And to echo what June has spoken about, about trying to understand, better understand humanity and why we choose to flee. And how many of us have been welcomed because of that compassion. And so I just want to thank you for allowing me to be here and to share this moment with you. And these wars, like Andrew has also spoken about, they have continued. This migration has happened since the beginning of time. It continues to happen. And I just am so grateful for my family's choice to leave all they had to fight for my freedom before I was even a part of this world. So thank you so much. Bless y'all.
Promise to leave you with fine hands. Allow me to take you around. I may not work at the nail shop, but I have witnessed it. Seeing how my auntie's fingerprints have become worn away in acetone in exchange for your pristine hands that look like they've never done a day's work, but that's how you like it. Leave the dirty work for the cleaning ladies. They already clean around broken china with their tongues. Ought to learn how to pick up after themselves. Oh, I ain't hungry, I'm here. It sounds foreign, so assume the worst and sit satiated knowing their living sits comfortably in your purse. Would you like a demonstration? Here they are. Take your pick of male color and woman, all named Julie, Jennifer, and Jessica, just for your convenience watch, as they hammer white hands like they tend to God himself. Construct temples out of rhinestone, covered stardust, and whatever else is selected from that colossal shell that spans across entire walls and salon and says, here, for you, pick color, I make happen, pick color, I make beautiful. It still amazes me how they manage to maintain such brilliant enthusiasm, even in fractional English. Even as the green bells and incessant wine and the heat of bodies fill the room, and the soaked cotton balls and wasteds paint everything with lacquered fingers, and the patrons get more vicious as the day leads into afternoon, and the head begins to hammer and hammer and hurt amidst the hurricane of noise with their inflatable feet and soggy hands as warning signs of natural disaster. But the only statement they manage to issue is, gosh, please. Asked my mother why so many Vietnamese women became mountain. She told me it's because we are a hard-working group. I can tell people who know how to make things beautiful, and I wanted to tell her yes. We are also a soft-spoken people, a shipwrecked people who learn how to take shelter and weather the storm even after the sun had come out. Never forget this instant. Plastered firmly onto my soul and sealed in by the kind of glue that holds entire past. Veins branching along my skin like the waterways of my mother country, I too will learn to build temples, but only to my own God.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Vincent and I am a proud Vietnamese American youth. Today, April 30th, 2025, 50 years since the fall of Saigon on April 30th, 1975. As Vietnamese Americans, we are in a unique position to have the cultural upbringing of our Vietnamese culture from our both people, refugee parents, grandparents, and family members in combination with our American culture from this country, the United States of America. Despite 50 years passing, many Vietnamese refugees are still traumatized by the horrors of the war and by communism. Still, I know that Vietnamese people are resilient. They strive every day since their arrival in this country to start anew, to better not just their lives, but for their families too, such as myself. Therefore, it is imperative, important for young Vietnamese Americans like myself to continue to bridge this divide between cultures, to remember and to teach our proud Vietnamese history, our unique history to future generations, and to honor the sacrifices of American, Australian, South Korean, South Vietnamese service members, and to honor the sacrifices of our boat people and refugee family members. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jimmy, and I'm the son of two Vietnamese refugees who came to the States as boat people in 1979 and 1981, I believe. I think it's the journey that my parents took from Vietnam to the U.S., risked their lives on the ocean, and going forward so that future generations may benefit. I am the benefactor of that. That's something that drives me intensely, drives my brother intensely, my wife as well, her family also came from Vietnam. It drives us intensely to capitalize on the opportunity that has been handed to us in growing up in the United States. We have an opportunity, we have to deal with any of those things. And so it gives us the motivation to honor the legacy of our parents and to work hard to succeed and to really just show that, for mom and dad, their sacrifices were big, and that we honor, we understand what they did for us, and we are grateful for that, and we do our best to carry on the legacy with pride. Yeah.
50 years ago, I was just 3 years old, one of 4 children. My baby brother was only 6 months old. I remember my mother cradling him in her arms. My grandparents came too, along with 50 other relatives and friends. I remember us leaving Vietnam just a few days after the fall of Saigon and climbing into a small fishing boat and sailing into the unknown, clinging onto only hope. We didn't know where the sea would take us. We risked everything, leaving behind a homeland in pain, hearts heavy with loss, but we were also lifted by a vision of freedom and a hope for new beginnings. I remember those early years in the U.S. were not so easy. We carried the trauma of war, the struggle of resettlement, and the burden of beginning again. And yet, through those hardships came the opportunity to grow, to adapt, and eventually to thrive. As a Vietnamese American woman, I often reflect on the weight of that journey, the way it has shaped me, the way it has called me to live with intention, to choose gratitude, to honor my past by nurturing a life of meaning. Remembering who I am and where I come from keeps me grounded. It reconnects me with my parents' strength, my ancestors' resilience, and the courage of every refugee. And family and friends that were left behind. This journey wasn't just mine, it's ours. And remembering those in the past, and people, and honoring the people today, in the present, who have made it possible. Being here today at the Viện Museum brings this full circle for me. This place exists because of the vision of my great uncle, whom I call Uncle. His legacy is a gift, a space for reflection, remembrance, and pride, a place where our children and future generations would always remember the heroes that risked their lives so that they can feel the spirit of Vietnam as they create their way into the world.
Hey, we're here on the 50th anniversary of the end of the war in Vietnam. And for all of us who lived through that time period, we know how important it is to remember our past. And if we don't remember our past, who will? And so that's the work at the Viện Museum, it's my work as a writer, it's the work that I do my own arts organization, and that's work with these artists network. It's so crucial to engage in the work of remembrance, especially in a country like the United States, which likes to forget difficult things. By remembering, we also renew ourselves. By remembering, we know that things have ended, but by remembering, we know that those ends lead to new beginnings. And that's part of what makes the Americans in the United States. We're here because of this complicated, complex, tragic histories that we need to recall in all their complexity, and that's a very demanding thing to do. But we shouldn't be trapped by the past. We should turn to the past in order to understand our present. We should try to figure out what kind of new direction we can take so that we don't repeat the mistakes of the past, and hopefully we can renew ourselves in positive ways that will reshape ourselves, our Vietnamese community, the United States, and Vietnam.
Thưa quý vị,